This is the end of the beginning. Welcome to today's show. The weather warfare is on. I've covered it over the years. Most of you are very much familiar with weather, weaponization, the manipulation of weather. You know, things you've been taught to think don't actually exist because they have ingrained sayings in your head like, you can't control the weather. You can't control Mother Nature. Oh no, they can control Mother Nature, and it's quite easy for them to do. In fact, they've been doing it for quite a long time. Just right now, since they've convinced enough people that climate change is real, now they are unleashing weapons of weather on all of us. We just saw them obviously use direct energy weapons in Maui. We've seen them use direct energy weapons as well as the HARP weapon in other situations in this country. We saw the fires in California, and then we've seen these upticks in tornadoes, these upticks in hurricanes. Nobody seems to be suspicious. They all of a sudden think that we get hurricanes week after week after week. Florida just gets hit week after week. Texas gets hit week after week. Well, maybe this will be enough to wake some people up, but unfortunately, I think it'll have the opposite effect because they could just start doing these types of things like send tropical storms and hurricanes at places like California where you might say, oh, I guess that's, it's on the coast. Oh, yeah. Well, don't you remember this thing they've told everybody exists called the jet stream? How convenient that all of a sudden the jet stream also doesn't exist, that the weather can just go all over the place out of control because of climate change. That's real convenient. I'll get into that later in the video. But nobody seems to be suspicious that all of a sudden, a week or two after Maui, all these other things going on. Now we have another hurricane. This one, of course, forming towards California because it's normal, of course, for hurricanes and tropical storms to go in this direction. Never, ever seen before, of course. But nobody's asking any questions because they know society's dumbed down enough. Take a look at this clip about the tropical storm Hilary that's hitting the West Coast, which is hitting California, one of the places that they want to wipe out. So again, they can use flooding, they can use all these things to get the homeless, to get businesses out, destroy businesses, destroy it all, because that's what this is all about. Take a look at this. First time since 1939.
Anyone waking up this morning hearing a hurricane is headed toward Southern California is going to be very confused, as I was, because it doesn't happen a lot.
Yeah, you got to go back to 1939, the last time we had a tropical storm make landfall in Southern California. So this is significant, and people are going to be caught off guard with this system. We're closely monitoring it, but this storm intensified by 75 miles per hour.
And we begin tonight with 42 million people in the West bracing for Hurricane Hilary. The massive and rare storm is heading directly toward the Southwest. The effects of the storm are already being felt in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, with high winds and torrential downpours. Right now, people from San Diego to Los Angeles are preparing for the worst beginning over the weekend as Southern California is under its first ever tropical storm watch. The storm, packing triple-digit wind speeds, is expected to weaken as it moves closer to land, but could become the first tropical storm to make landfall in California in more than 8 decades. Forecasters say some areas of California and Nevada could see 10 inches of rain. CBS's Carter Evans will start us off tonight from along the California coast.
Southern California is taking advantage of the calm before the storm, building berms to protect beach communities from high surf, and swiftwater rescue teams are on standby.
We are getting ready now ahead of this event as it makes landfall to make sure that we are prepared.
Flooding is a huge concern after relentless winter storms battered the Golden State earlier this year. Now, emergency managers are tracking Hilary, trying to anticipate where resources will be needed most. When the storm hits, some areas could see up to 10 inches of rain. Las Vegas usually gets a little more than 4 inches of rain in a year. If the storm continues on its path, it could get that amount in one weekend. The last tropical storm to hit Southern California was back in 1939. It dumped more than 5 inches of rain in Los Angeles, flooding communities and washing away homes. 45 people died.
It's a once-in-a-lifetime event. This really is an all-hands-on-deck effort.
Now, it's a beautiful, sunny Southern California day right now, but that is likely to change soon. This storm will bring high surf and high winds. That could create treacherous ocean conditions as early as this weekend. Lifeguards are also warning about the runoff from all the rain. That will likely contaminate the water around the beaches here for days after the storm. JB?
Carter Evans with the latest.
So don't be suspicious about this. It's climate change. You see how this works? Is anyone getting it yet? They've created this boogeyman because they're planning on using weather manipulation to attack the citizens, because if they just rolled down the street with army tanks, it'd be a little bit different. And maybe some of those soldiers, even though most of them are super soldiers and have no conscience whatsoever, some of them might be against turning on their own citizens. But when it comes to stuff like this, it doesn't matter, you see, because nobody can see it, so we could just blame it on the climate. So not only can they destroy and weaponize the weather, they're also going to use it as a way to enslave you in your home. You don't think they'll do that? Well, they just did it a few years ago, okay? They just did that, and now they're doing this. So we can all look at that map, and shouldn't people just automatically be saying, since when does storms go like that? Has anyone ever seen a storm go like that? Of course you haven't. Because from all the times we've been shown the weather map, which we know, of course, they can control the weather, have been able to for 100 years or so, been able to control the weather. So those stuff they show you and where storms are headed are all based on their design, of course, because they can create these things. They show us ahead of time because, well, they created ahead of time. But now they're all of a sudden going against their own rules. So since they're going against their own rules because they need to wipe out the West Coast as well, well, they're just going to come out and tell you that the jet stream has now changed, and it's because of the climate. Take a listen and a look at this clip from mainstream media about how the jet stream has changed, and listen to some of the other stuff about how it's the hottest summer in the history of life. All of a sudden, it's the hottest summer ever recorded in the history of humanity. I mean, nobody's seeing it except in some small places where it's normally hot anyway. I know on the East Coast that it was 70 degrees in June, even 60 degrees for the entire month. Yet, of course, if people hear the lie enough on TV, they'll go out and repeat it without actually even going outside and checking the weather. It could be 50 degrees, and they could tell these people that it's 100, and they'll actually believe it's 100. But listen to this propaganda.
And flooding is also an issue here in this country. A strong storms moved through central Oklahoma this morning, bringing heavy rain and wind. The oppressive heat also continuing this weekend, capping off a week that scientists say was the hottest week in recorded history. But meteorologist and climate specialist Jeff Berardelli writes this: as the steady drumbeat of human-caused climate heating beats on, the summer of 2023 will soon be considered a cool summer in a couple of decades. And Jeff Berardelli is joining us now. That's not easy to hear, Jeff. So thanks for the bad news. But let's get into it if we can, because, you know, what is this kind of trend of warming temperatures around the globe telling you, like the hottest days on record, one day after another, the ocean feeling warmer than ever as well?
None of it's surprising. It's astonishing to see it happening, but we expected this to happen. I mean, remember, we've been warming the Earth for about the past 100 years, and especially over the past 50 years or so, and it just continues unabated. Now, on top of that, this year we have a natural oscillation called El Nino, and every time we have an El Nino year, every few years or so, we're injecting a lot more heat from the Pacific Ocean on top of that baseline warming from climate change. And what we're seeing is everything come together this year for astonishing records. We're not just beating the records by a little bit. We are obliterating records to the point where we've never seen these unprecedented records that we're seeing around Earth right now.
I want to ask you about one of the leading theories, which is basically about the jet stream, right? Saying that climate change is kind of disrupting this jet stream, which is what's causing a heat dome, I guess, over Canada, parts of the South, and then leading to the hazy skies that we've been seeing a lot in the Northeast as well, with these pretty high temperatures. Is that a theory that you're on board with?
Yeah, for sure. We see these jet streams becoming more amplified, more undulations, and the jet stream seems to be slowing down at times. And what happens when the jet stream slows down is it begins to undulate more and it gets stuck. So we're seeing these more high latitude blocking patterns. Sometimes, like this year, it's over Canada. Next year, it could be over Siberia. Perhaps the year after, it's going to be over the center of the United States. It varies exactly where it is, but it gets stuck for weeks and weeks on end. And it's not just one. There are several of them. So concurrent or compounding heat domes, which means that various places on Earth have heat waves at the same time, droughts at the same time, which of course makes it very hard for agriculture and can cause these shocks at the same time all over Earth, which can cause major problems. And a study just came out to confirm what I'm talking about.
So you write this as well. This may all seem hopeless, but we know exactly what the problem is. We know exactly how to fix it. And we have all the solutions that we need now. Jeff, what are they? What do we need to do? And when would we be seeing kind of the fruits of our labor? Right. I kind of think about this in the way in which we've been seeing inflation, just kind of talking about something else that we've had to kind of battle over the last year. Right. And what the Fed chair is doing with interest rates. I'm wondering if we were to institute some of these solutions, when would we start to see kind of climate change start to turn around?
Okay, well, it takes a while, right? But if we stop emitting, as soon as we stop emitting, Earth's temperature stopped going up. So if we were to stop emissions, let's say in the next 20 or 30 years, at that point where we no longer are emitting, and perhaps we begin to suck some of that carbon dioxide back out of the atmosphere, at that point, we stop warming the atmosphere. That matters. Every 1/10 of a degree matters. But yes, you're going to have to wait to see the fruit of your labor. We have already injected a lot of heat into the atmosphere and the oceans. The heat that we've injected into the oceans will be there for hundreds and hundreds of years, melting ice. Yeah. We might be able to slow the progression of that kind of thing, but a lot of sea level rise is baked in, which means we're going to see meters of sea level rise in the future. The key here is slowing it down so we can adapt, and nature, animals and plants, can adapt as well.
So conveniently to fit the narrative, like I covered with the wildfires in Canada, how the smoke was blowing down and covering and blanketing America, going from the east all the way to the west and then back around. And they're saying that the jet stream was affected by it, instead of saying, well, that they were pretty much just poisoning the air with things like benzene and formaldehyde. Well, now we have this, and I've covered so many times, and if you haven't seen the videos, you can go through my archive, you can go through the website. I won't use the same clips over and over because I know a lot of you are the same subscribers about weather manipulation and Operation Popeye, but I'll show you this one, a different one, where you can get another perspective about how China has weaponized weather. Now, here in America, keep in mind, we have HAARP. Yeah, we have HAARP, and we have other things that they could use to weaponize and manipulate the weather. But China's even out openly admitting to it. Yet people still somehow, some way are so stupid. And even with government documents out there, still don't believe that the government has the ability to weaponize the weather. They'll see something like this, and then they'll just say, well, I don't know if I believe that. Well, why would the government ever use it against us? They would just use it in warfare. Yeah, well, they would use it in warfare. And guess what? They're at war right now with the citizens. Take a look.
What if politicians could command the weather? If they could create a powerful monsoon as an act of warfare, a whirling hurricane which flattens a city, or an endless drought which starves a nation. Terrifying, right? But what if we told you that this astonishing ability to manipulate the weather is not confined to the realms of fantasy?
Can these scientists fly into a cloud and make it give rain to a needy Earth when it would not naturally do so?
Weather manipulation techniques have a long history, dating back to the mid-20th century. In 1946, Vincent Schaefer, a chemist working for General Electric, conducted the first true cloud seeding experiment by aircraft.
The discovery that humans could really affect clouds was made by this American. Nearly 30 years ago, Vince Schaefer was in his laboratory making clouds. It was a hot day, so he grabbed some dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, simply to help cool his freezer. But doing that transformed the cloud.
He dropped 6 pounds of crushed dry ice into a cloud in the Adirondack Mountains of New York. Almost immediately, snow began to fall.
There's a record of a pioneer experiment. First results were not spectacular, but they have definitely proved that rainmaking is a practical proposition, and it's one we shall hear more of in the future.
In later experiments, Schaefer and other GE colleagues would discover that certain types of particles are more effective at helping ice crystals form. Silver iodide, they found, is one of the best.
We have evidence now that hail and other severe storms can be modified. I think the time is rapidly approaching when we will be able to no longer depend on the vagaries of the weather, but perhaps can do something about it. It may be easier to control the weather than to forecast it.
Obviously, cloud seeding is a useful tool in the fight against drought. There are already instances where it has been put to good use in this context. Facing the daunting UN prediction of water scarcity for 14% of the world's population by 2025, the UAE proactively launched the UAE Research Program for Rains Enhancement Science in 1990. This initiative employs evolving technologies, including cloud seeding, to address the country's increasing water needs amidst its limited annual rainfall.
Some of these clouds, by nature, sometimes it rains, for example, only 40 to 50% of its rain that processed in the cloud that comes as rainfall. So by these operations, we try to increase this amount by, for example, from 15 to 30%.
Over the years, the project's effectiveness is noteworthy. For instance, in 2022 alone, 311 cloud seeding missions resulted in nearly 1,000 flying hours. This consistent progress underscores the importance and benefits of artificial rain in water-scarce regions like the UAE. While cloud seeding technology holds immense potential, it is important to acknowledge the existing challenges and concerns associated with its implementation. Cloud seeding does not guarantee precise control over the resulting weather patterns, making it challenging to determine its long-term effects accurately. The use of silver iodide, for instance, raises questions about its impact on ecosystems and human health if released in large quantities. To address these concerns, scientists are actively researching alternative, non-hazardous materials for use in cloud seeding technology. Edward Graham, a meteorologist at the University of the Highlands and Islands, UK, explains that simpler methods like salt flares have already been employed in places like the UAE.
In terms of the effect on the environment, cloud seeding nowadays, at least in the UAE, just uses salt flares, and that's what you get in table salt on your kitchen table. So there's no actual harm to the environment. Traditionally, chemicals such as silver iodide, which mimics the crystal structure of ice, have been used, but they're not used in the UAE today. In terms of carbon footprint, the planes that fly up into the clouds are just small planes. And when compared to the billions of cars on the planet and the huge planes doing international air travel every day, it's just a drop in the ocean in terms of carbon footprint and carbon emissions.
Furthermore, cloud seeding's potential to disrupt natural precipitation patterns poses risks to neighboring regions and ecosystems. Altering rainfall distribution can have cascading effects on water availability, agricultural systems, and biodiversity. Disruptions in the natural water cycle may exacerbate water scarcity in certain areas, while causing excessive rainfall and flooding in others. However, what is typically seen as a challenge in one context can become an opportunity in another.
Back in July, the Chinese Communist Party marked its centenary with a ceremony attended by tens of thousands of people on Tiananmen Square. Now, a report has just been released by Beijing's Tsinghua University, revealing that the government artificially changed the weather for that event.
This dichotomy was not lost on military strategists. The strategic potential of weather manipulation, a concept that may sound like science fiction, began to take form. A seminal venture into this uncharted territory was a collaboration between the US Department of Defense and General Electric. The endeavor, known as Project Popeye, Conducted during the Vietnam War, the project's goal was to flood enemy supply routes by modulating rainfall patterns. This bold paradigm shift in warfare tactics served as the cornerstone for subsequent developments in the militarization of weather manipulation.
In China, they're waging war on the weather. A drought so severe, they're firing rockets into the sky to make it rain.
China has taken weather manipulation to new heights, surpassing other nations in its ambitious pursuit. Already capable of artificially manipulating the weather over its major cities, China's aspirations reach even further. By 2025, it aims to extend its reach to modify the weather over half of its vast territory, a prospect that has raised concerns among neighboring countries, particularly India. China's weather manipulation capabilities also hold significant potential as a military strategy. With military involvement and a vast workforce, China has developed aircraft and anti-aircraft guns to manipulate cloud formations and precipitation. By artificially altering rainy conditions in border regions, a nation can impede enemy troop movements and logistics operations, effectively slowing down adversary forces. This real-time tactical advantage can be invaluable in military conflicts. The ability to control the weather, even on a localized scale, provides a unique element of power projection and can shape the outcome of military engagements. By altering rainfall and monsoon cycles, China's activities may disrupt agricultural productivity in countries such as India, Myanmar, and Vietnam. This raises the specter of rain stealing and strains regional relationships, highlighting the geopolitical implications of weather manipulation as a tool of power. Addressing the challenges posed by weather manipulation requires international cooperation and effective regulatory frameworks. Collaborative efforts among governments, scientific communities, and international organizations are crucial to ensure responsible and accountable use of weather manipulation technologies. As we witness in China's mastery of weather manipulation techniques and its grandiose weather modification program, the gravity of its geostrategic implications becomes apparent. The ability to shape regional weather patterns and potentially utilize weather manipulation for military purposes presents a formidable tool of influence. Yet, as we stand at the precipice of this extraordinary power, we must confront a profound question. Is humankind truly ready to wield the awesome and dramatic power to control the weather?
As satellites take their place alongside computers as powerful scientific tools, the meteorology of the 1970s can deal quite well with large-scale weather systems that develop over a few days. But the weather machine operates on many different timescales, from thousands of years for making or melting great ice sheets to the fleeting lives of individual clouds.
So they have the ability to do this with weather, right? So again, I've been talking about this all the time, and I'm trying to let people out there understand the hardest part is to get people to believe that there are people that are this wicked that would do this to others. Yet, these same people who don't believe the government would do that, they watch these true crime shows and they see stories about Jeffrey Dahmer, and they're like, oh man, there's some sick people out there. So I tell you this, there's some sick people out there. That's right. And they're all in charge of your government. They're all in charge of big brand corporations, et cetera, because they've all been placed there. And these people are sicker than Jeffrey Dahmer. They are sicker than Ted Bundy, than John Wayne Gacy. You name them. They're sicker. They're times 1 trillion times sicker. And they're willing to do this on a global scale, on a worldwide scale, not just a national scale, not just, Jeffrey Dahmer committed crimes against people that he met. Well, these people are committing crimes against everyone. They don't care what your skin color is. They don't care what your gender is, despite what they pretend. The facade they put on, and the reason that they cling to the Democratic Party is because they know they've brainwashed those people into believing that communism is good and to believing that everything they say is good. So they're protected by those people. Those people are idolaters that look up to the Bill Gateses of the world, that look up to all these low-life slimeball celebrities that are out there promoting climate change. So the thing that should be going on in people's minds when they hear this story, right? A light bulb should go off and they should say, I don't remember there being hurricanes or tropical storms ever in California. When's the last one? Oh, well, the mainstream media is telling us 1939. So then they should get suspicious because they should also see the pattern of the jet stream, right? Because they normally would if they didn't have climate change ingrained in their head. They'd say, this is really weird. Is our government weaponizing the weather against us since we know they have the capability, right? But no, they won't, because they have this climate change boogeyman to make them believe that all the weather is going haywire all over the world. Did you hear the clip that I played earlier? If you didn't, go back and listen. About the jet stream, about how it's hovering over Canada this year, and next year it's going to be over another place, and it's just going to sit there, apparently. It's just decided that it wants to park. It's decided it doesn't want to move anymore, so it's going to stop. It's going to sit there, and it's just going to burn the entire region to the ground. And no one's suspicious about this. Never before. But of course, that's because we've never had carbon emissions like this before, right? No, we've never had a government this wicked before. And it's the governments around the world working together against the citizens. So now Hilary Clinton, the hurricane, the tropical storm, is going to go do more damage to California as if enough hasn't already been done. They hit them with hurricanes. They hit them with earthquakes normally. They obviously are destroying Los Angeles. They're destroying all of it because they're going to bring in their new smart cities and places like that. And then next up, you're going to hear about storms hitting New York, right? Because that's how this is going to work. These are going to be the hubs, as they already are. New York, Los Angeles. Massive smart cities. We're going to be able to herd massive amounts of Democrats into these places to live and become slaves, not without ever realizing it. Well, they will realize it at some point when the government starts going against them as far as what they say and what they're allowed to do, because they're not going to, as much as we know how sick the government is, they're not going to, just because these people are sick and perverse, they're not going to let them do everything that they want to do. These cities are going to be prisons. They're going to be experimenting on these people. These people are nothing more to them than lab rats. This will be the first human experiment done on a mass scale. They've done this stuff, obviously. They've taken homeless people off the streets. They've been doing these experiments with MK Ultra and LSD and all these children that are born into these secret societies. They've been doing this stuff with those people. Now they're going to do a mass experiment on a mass scale in these smart cities. But in the meantime, they're going to destroy America and destroy other countries around the world with hurricanes, with tornadoes. Nobody's suspicious, by the way, of tornadoes popping up in places like New Jersey and New York. That's never happened ever, all of a sudden, but it's climate change, right? No one's suspicious about like 60 tornadoes at once hitting places like Kentucky and Oklahoma. They're like, oh, they get tornadoes. Oh, do they? They get 60 at once. Oh, well, it's climate change. Oh, how convenient. So they're wiping out all these areas of land. They don't need to use military tanks. They don't need to use nukes, whether you believe those are real or not. They're using the weather. It's the most dangerous weapon that there is, and they have it. And what makes it even more dangerous is that nobody has to be held accountable, except for you and me, because at the end of the day, all these storms and all this weather manipulation that they're doing, they're going to blame on us. And they're going to say all of these things have happened because of you, everybody else, and how they're living, and now you need to lower your standard of living, and we're going to shut your power off and all this other stuff, and you're going to stay indoors at all times. If you survive, of course, the onslaught of weather attacks that are going to continue to come from the world governments. It's frightening, but it's true. I thank everybody for being here. Reminder, sub to my other channels. Probably going to get a strike, so please make sure you're sub there. Hope to see more people over on the website, and I thank everybody for the support. Prayers for anybody in the line of fire anywhere around the world right now, from weapons of mass destruction, or should we just call them weather weapons of mass destruction, because that's what they are. I thank you again. God bless all of you and your families.